And we're live. Thank you to our viewers. I want to, before we get started here, this is going to be episode 327 of the Polite Society podcast. We are going to be going here in a second. Before we get going, I want to mention our advertisers. We have Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, and the Firearms Safety Institute, and, of course, the Firearms Policy Coalition. Please go visit these people. And please do business with them. They are the reason that you keep getting our show, because I couldn't afford to do it anymore if we didn't get help. We were scheduled to have an interview with Daniel Shaw. Wires got crossed somehow or another. I have not been able to connect with him today, and so we're going to go ahead and continue on. All right. Get to the right part of the show notes. And we are good on levels on the recorder. Are we ready to lay down show intro and personal news?
I'm good. Let's go.
All right, there we go. Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast presented by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one live Sunday, April 26th, 2015. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse. And on tonight's show, we'll talk about Cleveland taking a backward step for our rights.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about a Pew Research poll that is giving the Bloomberg clan a bit of a migraine.
I'm Gary Doherty, and in one of our DGUs, an Illinois resident stops a possible mass shooting. Yes, he had a concealed carry permit, so climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 327 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Okay, let's get right into it. Personal news segment, what we've done since the last time we've been on the air. Gary, you're the first up. You weren't feeling so hot last week. You feeling any better?
I'm feeling 100%. Yes, great. Thank you for asking. I almost never get sick, so when I do, I hate it. But yeah, I went back rolling, keeping very busy with everything, and our friend John Richardson sent me a little message and said, hey, here's a pretty good AR to look at. So I went and ordered it.
I love being an enabler.
That lets you guest host for Tom Gresham, right?
Yeah.
So the Smith & Wesson M&P 15 Sport has been ordered. I don't have a tracking number yet. I'm sure it's on the way. My FFL, who is a great guy, has already contacted me. I sent him an email. I said, send him your license. He said, okay, all done. So all the paperwork is ready, and it's just waiting. And I'm sure next week, I'm pretty confident it'll be here next week. I don't see any shipping problems. They had it in stock and everything. Got a great deal. $200 off the suggested retail price.
Well, that's nothing to sneeze at.
Missing a dust cover, but I don't have any plans to be in the dust, so I think I'll be all right.
Oh, you're going to live and fire it in a clean room?
Yes. Well, once you're firing, the dust cover's open. So
that's true.
You know, they obviously did it as a cost savings measure, and the reviews are strong, so I'm going with it.
Okay, once you get it, you'll have to let us know what you think.
Will do.
All right. Well, John, you're up next, man. What's been up with you?
Well, I just spent the weekend visiting with my granddaughter, Olivia Grace. It is amazing how much she has grown in a mere 3 weeks or so since I've seen her last. She also smiles now. Knowing that I teach, the semester is coming to an end and papers to grade are starting to pile up. I love to teach. I hate the grading. Or I tolerate it's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you get calls from students like, well, what do I need to make on this project so I can get an A+ for the course? Like, just do your best work. Don't give me this grade stuff. And with regard to gun stuff, Gary will be interested in this. I have finally finished my lightweight AR.
I mean, you found all the parts.
And it's all been assembled.
Oh.
I'm still getting the parts for my retro AR.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry.
Yeah, but I thought I had to trade out the buffer tube on this. I thought it was a commercial, but it was actually a mil spec, and there's just a hair difference. But I had a Mission First tactical stock that is a little tight on it, and I have it for test and evaluation, and so anyway, I still need to zero it before I do an actual review and blog post on it. But hopefully, I'll get some time this week to do that.
That sounds cool, John.
Yeah.
So what's the difference now? How much does your lightweight weigh compared to your suggestion to me?
I don't know how much yours weighs, but I'm trying to get mine down to right at about 6 pounds.
Okay, 6.45 according to the factory.
And this is with an optic on it.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay. And I gotta hand you kudos, John. And for listeners, John just walked in the door as we were setting up the call to record. He went to visit the grandbaby and hustled home to be on the show. So,
thank you,
John. You're up next, man. John? We just did you, John. I'm sorry, Rob. You're up next. What's up with you, man?
I'll be Rob. You be Paul. She can be Susan. Or if we got
Okay, that's a deal. That's a deal.
When we were done with the show last week, I get this text message. It goes, Rob, can you come on the show? I'm all, who are you? So I made a guest appearance on Armed American Radio last Sunday. That was different. I don't think I spoke very much, but at least I hung out, offered moral support. I wrote some news for Ken Blanchard for Black Man with a Gun. Ken's got a day job now, and he's running out of time because he's... Tuesday night, I went to a local meeting for self-defense activists in San Diego County. We've got our dinner set up, and we're discussing, really local lobbying, as in county supervisors on down. I heard Ed Peruta speak yesterday at a Tea Party meeting. I'll talk about that later. And I wrote 2 articles for AmmoLand and Clash Daily. So I feel like I've been a busy boy.
Cool. I don't listen to Armed American Radio Live. I didn't know you were on it, so I'll have to go grab the podcast.
I don't think I said 50 words in 2 hours.
Well, okay. Well, that leaves Susan.
My wife just made fun of us that guys only grunt anyway, so that was a little cold. That hurt.
And you got a Susan. Susan gave you a thumbs up for that. So, with us, I've been. Well, I drove all. I took Monday off. I was up real late Sunday night doing some work on the show, and Monday I went in to go to work. And the boss said, "You look like hell." I said, "Gee, thanks, boss." And he said, "You're not driving my truck that tired." He said,
wow.
Go take a day off and come back tomorrow." So that's exactly what I did. And what did I do Monday with my day off? I got some more work done. I did some more editing on the audiobook. Did this weekend, besides, I did get some more recording done yesterday on the audiobook. I think one more weekend of work will get that, at least the recording part, done. I'm heavily working on editing, but I did some dry fire practice, and I was really looking in the dry fire practice to work on my draw, and what I wanted to find out was I've been wearing a lot of Hawaiian shirts for cover. I wear a T-shirt. I wear my open carry, my Concealment Solutions Sidewinder Pro holster. It's an outside the waistband holster, and I wear a Hawaiian shirt for concealment. And My other option for concealment is to wear the photographer's vest, or you see a lot of anybody who's been to competitions, you'll see people wearing these kind of vests. They're often called shoot me vests.
Yes.
Shoot me first vests. Well, what I found was the Hawaiian shirts do a great job of concealing and do a really bad job of getting out of the way. And the photographer's vest does both a good job of concealing and a really good job of getting out of the way, especially if you keep your keys in your pocket that you got to flip back.
Amen.
And so I'm going to be, I still love my Hawaiian shirts. I'm still going to wear them as much as I possibly can because it just looks cool, I think. It brings back that Miami Vice vibe to me. But I think honestly I should be for most of my carry, if I ever. And again, we get back to that old thing. If you know you're going to be in trouble, why are you doing what you're doing? But I think I got to add that concealment vest, that photographer's vest, into more of my daily wear stuff, because it does do such a better job with the draw of getting out and staying out of the way long enough for me to get the gun out of the holster and too low ready.
You know, I read something this past week. You refer to it as the shoot me first vest. And it was a guy that was stopped by police for wearing it, and he was a photographer. And I think they were after him because he was a photographer, not because they thought he was carrying.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like, we don't want you taking pictures here. I think I might have read it on Instapundit or something.
It wasn't their Second Amendment rights they were going after. It was the guy's First Amendment rights they were going after.
And they probably would have had a cow if he was also carrying.
Yeah.
Legally, mind you.
What else with us? Did some more work on the studio. As viewers on YouTube can see, got some decorations hung up behind me. And let's see, Susan, anything new with you? You worked a ton of hours this week.
45.
Yeah. So, but nothing.
We did hire a couple new people, so I'll be working on training them so I can go back down to 42 hours a week.
Yeah, there you go. And did some more work today on the studio, just getting things set up around here as far as getting everything exactly as we want it. Went and had to go make an emergency run to Guitar Center, which is our local, what I use for my recording equipment. The cable that we'd been using, the microphone cable we'd been using for Susan's microphone, developed a buzz. And that could have been, we've had some issues come and go in the past few weeks. That could have been what it was. I had to run down there and bought some stuff and missed the first 50 laps of the race today because of it. So,
no.
Yeah. But that's about it for us. Not a whole lot of exciting stuff other than Tri-Fire. And I do want to mention before we go to break, of course, we do have training coming up in the Sioux Falls area. Just a couple weeks left until we get 3 weeks from this weekend is when Bob Main and Ben Branham are going to be coming up to do the Beyond Concealed Carry Enhanced class in Sioux Falls. Folks, that one's just about sold out. Do not wait any longer. If you think you want into that class, $350. They're going to shoot 600 rounds. I have been buying stuff left and right for this class. Matter of fact, this I should have thrown into personal news. I've been searching for IDPA, ISPS, USPSA, IPSC style targets for this class. And since the last time I bought them, which was a couple of years ago when Kathy Jackson came up here to Sioux Falls, prices on those things have gone up. They're almost 75 cents a target now, and I think it was like 40 cents when I ordered them back when I ordered them for the Kathy Jackson class. So prices on those really went up. I was kind of shocked. But I got a lot of stuff ordered for that. I'm going to be building some new target stands, and if you want to get in on that class, folks, you need to get on it because there's only a couple seats left, and you go to handgunworld.com to register for that. Also, we've got coming up August 15th and 16th, I believe it is. We've got Kathy Jackson coming back to do her Cornered Cat class. That's going to be a co-ed class, and people have been getting emailing Susan on that one, so that one I believe will probably fill up as well. And you want to email Susan at politicsandguns.com if you want to get into that one. And last, I did promise Chaz, because he called me in tears, asking me if I would please mention that he's going to be training in Utah on July 24th and 25th. And so head over to Road Gunner Podcast Facebook page. It's got the information for that class. Last thing, because I had this on my notes, but I didn't look over in time. I want to say happy birthday a few weeks ago to my beautiful wife, Susan. Happy birthday this past week to John. And Rob's got a birthday coming up tomorrow. So happy birthday a day in advance, Rob. We got a bunch of people on our show right in that 2-week period. So, all right, let's go ahead and step off to break. When we come back, we've got news, and we'll get to that news right after this. Okay.
I was going to say, I'm really sorry you're struggling with your Hawaiian shirts. It's weird.
It's just that the waiting when I put my keys in my right hand pocket, which is of course I carry my gun on the right side. I'm right-handed. Put my keys in my pocket. I flip that vest, and it's just it's gone.
It hits you in the left ear.
Yeah, and when I took Kathy's class, that's what she said. Your goal is to have that thing hit your left shoulder, and so I vigorously flipped the Hawaiian shirts, and
a buddy of mine was wearing a Hawaiian shirt at Front Sight, and he slit that. What do you call it? It's not a hem if it's along the button line. And dropped 2 cartridges in there to give himself some weight.
Placket.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been thinking about having Susan add some weight down at the bottom of it because, of course, they're not designed to be tucked.
No, they're designed to be lightweight and comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine just was way more because there's so much more material.
Nobody's going.
What?
Yes, you're right.
Had that problem.
That's obviously it.
I'm surprised he's having a problem with it. That's all. It's just a surprise.
It's not that I'm having a problem. It's just that the vest does such a much better job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I like about that picture I threw into the show notes?
Because the vest is almost hitting your left ear.
The back of the vest hasn't fallen yet, and I've got the gun 3/4 of the way up to horizontal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. I've got.
That gun should already be rotated.
I know. I see that now. Good job, Gary. And thank you, by the way. You're right.
Okay, news. Let me scroll down in the show notes here.
Since that was last fall, and I went and took some instruction because I hadn't had anybody look carefully at me and say, fix that.
Right.
That was one of the things they did.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but somehow I clicked on the, and I cannot get it to undo it. So I will try to, as people are talking, try to focus on them, not on my ugly face. But
you clicked on yourself. Just click on yourself again.
Oh, that worked.
There we go.
I know.
Okay.
And that's why I don't have a camera on me.
All right, you ready to read some news, sweetheart?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. And welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our news segment, and Susan, what do we got coming up first?
We've heard anti-gun groups say that firearms ownership is falling. They claim that record gun sales are going to fewer and fewer gun owners, and that the majority of people are calling for gun control. New polling data from Pew Research calls that claim into question. In fact, the poll discovered a huge shift in public opinion about the right to self-defense. Today, and for the first time, more Americans support the right of self-defense instead of asking for more gun control. 52% say that protecting gun rights is important, while only 42% say the government should do more to control firearms ownership. There are several reasons for our changing opinions, though not all of them make sense. 63% of us think crime is rising. In fact, crime rates continue to fall, with current crime rates falling to only a quarter of the crime rate of the early 1990s. We have a distorted perception of violence in society. Perhaps that's why today, 63% of us say a gun in the home makes us feel safer. 10 years ago, we were in a 50-50 tie on that issue.
Paul, I didn't know we had that many listeners, but somebody's changing hearts and minds out there.
I wish we had as many listeners as it would take to change national opinions.
Well, maybe our listeners have friends.
There you go.
And friends of friends, and they just pass it on to somebody else.
Yep. Make sure you pass our show along to somebody else. PoliticsandGuns.com or PoliteSocietyPodcast.com.
Yeah, it takes longer for some people for the logic to seep in, but we talked about that the movie Safe Haven and just all the facts that keep coming out, the defensive gun uses that we talk about every week. That information is largely suppressed in the mainstream media, but once in a while it sneaks out. And when people hear it, their logic finally kicks in their brain.
Yeah.
Gary, I wrote about this article, and it's not quite that the news is suppressed, it's that it's biased, because we're exposed to all kinds of news about violence in the media. It's so biased. It says guns are bad. I mean, think of this. Crime fell by 75%, and yet we still get our 15 minutes of violent attacks designed to glue us to the TV screen.
Right. But if the defensive gun uses are reported so infrequently, isn't that being suppressed?
Yes, the defensive gun use is suppressed, but the media is telling us guns are bad. And what a lot of people did is say, oh, the world's a violent place. I need to protect myself. So I made fun of the media. I think they brought this on themselves. They don't like what they did, but they're not about to give us any perspective that would let us change the channel.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and maybe I don't want to, I do not want to claim all the responsibility myself, because it doesn't lie with me. It doesn't lie with Rob, John, or Gary. But
Susan did it. Good job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm thinking that we are, as a medium, are becoming so much more pervasive that maybe that is the media, at large, not just us, but other podcasts, bloggers. Maybe that is making enough of a difference that it's changing the national views.
Can I give you some evidence to that effect?
Certainly.
20 years ago, the market would support one radio program that covered all of firearms. It was called Gun Talk. And it was everything from reloading to knives to you name it, hunting. Now we have a daily hour program that is just about armed self-defense because the market will support it.
Yeah, and there's, myriad. I mean,
Come to think of it, there are at least 7 hours of daily programming that are on armed self-defense. Yeah.
are you talking programming on over-the-air networks? Or are you talking that
I don't. Okay, what I was thinking of, Cam Edwards. That's not over the air.
No,
That's
it's
3
not.
hours a day. Bill Frady, GOA. Is he over the air or is he internet?
I think he's over the air in some markets.
Right. And then you've got Mark Walters, who's got 120 stations.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Maybe more. That's a large number, and then whatever else his pod people like me listen to in addition.
Well, and then you get the myriad of podcasts.
Right.
I gotta admit, I don't.
5 times that, right?
Yeah, I used to. When I first started listening to podcasts, it was exclusively about gun stuff, and because I have the show, my big fear, and I got to be honest, there are. Well, I listened to our show because I want to make sure I didn't make any editing screw-ups that made it to the air. But other weekly shows, I listen to Bob Main without fail. I listen to, when he puts one out, I listen to Chaz Murray because he's a friend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those are the podcasts, gun-related, that I always catch. Everybody else, I'm afraid of imitating them. And so I don't listen to Cam Edwards anymore. I don't listen to Tom Gresham every week anymore. I don't want to imitate anybody or just be another version of somebody.
Right.
And so I try myself. I still listen to a ton of podcasts, but they are lots of astronomy and physics podcasts.
Didn't we post something about that on the podcast page or on my personal page a while back? We don't imitate. We initiate and we innovate.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not, and despite, I'm going to come out and say it. The Toby and Styx went off, left our show a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
And they're off doing their own thing, and they've got a lot of shows out. I listened to a couple of them, but because I do not want to be, I don't want to be. I want to be me. I want to do my show. I don't want to imitate anybody else. I haven't listened. I've been accused of being rude and all that towards them, and if it appears that way, I'm sorry, but certainly wasn't intended that way. Anyway, I think we've kicked this around. Let's go ahead and what's our next news story?
Here's another measure of the changing view of firearms. A priest in a Detroit suburb now wants his parish to take a concealed carry class. I'm not sure how to pronounce this guy's last name, so we're just going to call him Father Edward. Father Edward wrote to his parish and scheduled a concealed carry class at Christ the King Parish. Father Edward was a pacifist. He ministered to military veterans and their families. It looks like the influence went both ways, since the father is known for recruiting new vocations to the priesthood, and Father Edward is now studying martial arts. He said it hurt to imagine an innocent person being hurt while all he could do was watch. The father was overruled by his bishop, so the next concealed carry classes won't be held at the parish. For now.
Well, hopefully that changed. The Catholic Church, I was born and raised in the Catholic Church. I don't know that it matters, but anymore I just consider myself a Christian. I don't consider myself a Catholic anymore. But the Catholic Church has always been ultra-pacifist. And that certainly, with the current Pope, is going to continue. But I don't think the Christian religion itself should be pacifist. A show I used to listen to a long time ago, and it's still out there somewhat, is the God and Guns podcast. And you just because you're a Christian doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to turn over and lay down. And certainly not a Catholic and certainly not Christian. Anybody else want to comment about that?
Well, Barb took her concealed carry class it was actually sponsored by a local Baptist church. I met with a client a couple weeks ago who had been a college administrator, went to divinity school, and now is the pastor for administration of a large and growing Baptist church, and he not only has his carry permit, he carries. I too grew up Catholic. Even though I haven't attended in a while, I do consider myself a Catholic. I think it's kind of like everything with the church and American Catholics. We pick and choose what we want. I think it's great that this priest took the initiative of saying, I think concealed carry is a good and viable thing for my parishioners, and I want to support it. I'm sorry his bishop overruled him. That doesn't denigrate the fact that this priest actually said, okay, we need to learn to protect ourselves. And I think it's great. I wish more priests would do it.
Wasn't it 100 years ago this week that the Armenian genocide happened? Or maybe it was 100 years ago last week. But very recently, it was 100 years ago that the Armenian genocide. And hello, folks, those were Christians.
Well, I always think back to a parish priest I used to have in Waynesville who's passed away now, but you didn't see many Catholic priests that were Purple Heart veterans and had the Purple Heart license plate. He had served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam as a medic attached to the Marines up in the area, the Da Nang, Ike area where the fighting was, fast and heavy. And he was a little guy. So
the letter that Father Edward Fried, that's how I'm pronouncing it, Susan, who knows what's the right way, sent out to his parish, talked about that. And he said, where does charity and vindictiveness and pacifism, where do those meet? I mean, that is the real part of being a Christian. More than just the words, more than just the posturing. I thought it was a fascinating letter.
There's more news on the culture front. Catholic college students have traditionally been more supportive of social justice rather than supporting the right to keep and bear arms. That is changing, at least in anti-gun Washington, D.C. The student government at Catholic University voted for concealed carry on campus. The vote for armed self-defense won by a margin of 16 to 11. Catholic U has policies and practices that are both liberal and conservative. It is located in the northeast quadrant of Washington, D.C. There are many news articles about students being robbed on campus and off campus, and they say a conservative is simply a liberal who's been mugged.
Well, unfortunately, Catholic University of America is in Washington, D.C., and as the things stand now, there's not going to be much carry, concealed or otherwise, on campus, given D.C.'s backward policies towards carry. But it's great to see them. It's great to see students step up and say, we need this right. We should be able to protect ourselves.
And John, can you name another college besides Texas A&M who voted for carry on campus? I'm sure there are others.
I know there are other colleges that have it, like Colorado State.
Right.
University of Colorado. I mean, Colorado State has had it
12 years, right?
12 years now.
Speaking of which,
a certain person affiliated with Bloomberg's daughter goes to Colorado State.
Right.
She'll just leave it at that.
Campus carry isn't academic or theoretical. We can examine real-world experience. We see the effects because Colorado had campus carry for the last 12 years.
Sound familiar?
There was only one reported incident. That was by a university employee, and no one was injured. Census data from the 1990s surveyed rape victims and victims of attempted rape. 26 of these victims said they used a firearm for self-defense. The armed women stopped their attacker in every case. They were neither raped nor injured after they presented a firearm. That tells us what to expect on campus.
Folks, when you're telling the story of why we need to be able to defend ourselves, this is another one of those perfect examples. Share this story. 26 attempts. 26 stopped by armed females.
You know what's amazing to me when people say, well, you should just call the police. What they're saying is, so in other words, you want me to be a victim. And then if I survive and am still capable, call the police and let them take evidence so that after about 19 to 20 other victims have occurred, they'll finally catch the guy. That's your solution?
That's no solution in my book.
Tough one to suck up.
Yeah. We do need to head off to break here. We got a lot more news to come up, and we'll get to that news right after this. Okay. Scroll down here.
What something happened. What was I going to do about gun control there? Let's get rid of that.
Oh.
Dink.
Okay, I got to be on the gasp. Okay. All right.
You got my text? Oh.
I don't know.
Looking at it, I just asked the question.
By the way, Paul, there is still a God and Guns podcast. I just signed up for it. I wanted to give it a listen.
Oh, okay. There's no links in the show notes stories.
Not as many.
Okay. All right. All right. Who wants to bring us in?
I'll do it.
All right. And we are rolling.
Hi, and welcome back to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Susan, I hear we have more news from D.C.
We do have more news from Washington, D.C. A gunman walked onto the steps of the U.S. Capitol. I know, you're shocked. The gun-free zones signs failed to stop the armed man. This disturbed individual committed suicide with one shot to his head. That means that the law-abiding citizens were at risk from those who do not obey the law. You'd have to be crazy to think that plastic signs stop violence. The Capitol was locked down for 2 hours after the shooting.
You know, perhaps Doc Wesson could tell us how many plastic signs put together would make adequate body armor.
John, that's such a YouTube video in the making.
Yeah.
How many gun-free zone signs will stop a bullet? Wow.
You know, I would think they'd have to be really darn thick. You'd have to have probably
Inch and a half, something like that.
Oh no, I'm thinking thicker than that. I'm thinking 4 or 5 inches.
But watch, here's something crazy. Our Capitol is rear-end high in armed security. What were there? Over 70 different law enforcement agencies with overlapping jurisdictions in Washington, D.C.? And yet, why do we need any of that? We have gun-free zone signs. That's good enough to keep civilians safe.
You know, I don't know if it's in the show notes, because I honestly haven't read them that much. But didn't I see a story where the D.C. Capitol Police now say that it's okay for congressmen to keep guns
in their offices?
Yeah.
Yeah. And at least for display, it was the Attorney General of D.C. was going to investigate Congressman Trey Gowdy from South Carolina and Congressman Ken Buck from Colorado because they posed with a picture with an AR that was Ken Buck's that was painted up like an American flag. They wouldn't prosecute David Gregory, but they thought about trying to prosecute a congressman who was not a liberal and not pro-gun control.
I wish they had. I think that would have been just fascinating to watch. In other words, I would love to have sold popcorn and taken bets on how that one was going to turn out.
Yeah, it's like, that's a very nice home rule you have there, DC. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
Yeah, you sure you want to go down that road?
Yep.
We have a bit of unexpected sanity to report from Maryland. The Maryland legislature repealed their ballistic imaging program. Ballistic imaging looks at the microscopic abrasions formed on a shell casing as it is fired. It turns out the case marks change as the gun gets dirty, as ammunition changes, and as the gun wears and springs fatigue. Ballistic fingerprinting has never been used to solve crime. Maryland stopped funding the program several years ago, but gun owners were still required to submit shell casings of new firearms. Not anymore.
I hope
Now
they
we have-
recycle all that brass, though.
Yeah.
That would be good. Now we have to ask if New York is smart enough to learn from Maryland and stop their own unsuccessful ballistic database. And let's ask if California will foolishly try to implement microstamping by looking at the mark left by the firing pin on the primer. I don't know if they're as smart as the politicians in Maryland.
I can speak for California, not the ones I've met.
Well, just think about it. It just makes sense that over time, as conditions in a firearm is and I'm going to take this, I think, Gary, or I think, Rob, I'm taking this from you. The action of a firearm is a very violent action.
Amen.
You are taking sometimes up to 1 ounce projectile and accelerating it from 0 to hundreds, if not thousands of feet per second, almost instantaneously. And for you to expect that nothing changes in the action of that weapon over, I've got thousands and thousands of rounds through my Glock since it was new, and I have not had it rebuilt. No parts have changed. It's been through cleanings, but that's about it. So yeah, to expect nothing to change anywhere in that process over an extended period of time, that's foolishness.
Well, I can't remember the exact numbers, but isn't it something like 60,000 pounds per square inch? Up to?
The 45 tends to run low at about 20,000. The 9 millimeters up around 30, and the 40 cal is up around 40,000 psi.
And then what is like a 357 or 44 mag run?
Those are comparable to the 40.
Oh, okay. I thought
Rifle cases are even higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get the oddballs like the 5.7 that fire the little tiny bullet with all kinds of powder to make an unbelievable beat per second. I wouldn't even venture a guess as to how many PSI they're putting out.
Politics is as much about appearance as performance. The director of safety in Cleveland said as much. Michael McGrath proposed new gun laws and openly admitted they might not do any good. They were passed by the Cleveland City Council. Quoting the mayor, the legislation was not designed to stop gun violence. Instead, he hopes it will encourage responsible gun ownership. Here are the new laws that reflect the council's values. Outlaw carrying a concealed deadly weapon or handgun, unless the person is a police officer or a person who holds a license to carry a concealed weapon. Requires a person who sells or transfers a gun and who is not a licensed gun dealer to report such transactions to the police. requires an owner to report a lost or stolen gun to police. Creates a gun offender registry, requiring people convicted of gun crimes to register their names with Cleveland's safety director. Prohibits the display, marking, or sale of a facsimile firearm and prohibits brandishing a facsimile firearm in the presence of law enforcement or with the intent to frighten people. Prohibits the negligent transfer of a firearm to a felon or intoxicated person. Sets restrictions for firearms in the hands of minors and restricts discharging firearms in public areas, including schools, churches, cemeteries, playgrounds, and parks, and requires owners to safely store firearms to keep them from being stolen or out of the hands of children.
I don't know. The most of this is kind of, you can't shoot you can't open fire in a school, really. Some of it is just silliness, and some of it is going back to selling or transferring a gun. You must report it to the police. It's none of their business. Yes. None of their business what I do with my personal property. I am not going to participate in a registration scheme.
It was my impression, and I could be wrong, but I thought the state of Ohio had state preemption of firearms laws.
I thought that too. That's going to have to work its way through. Somebody's got to become a test case, and then it's got to work its way through the legal system, right?
Why?
No, actually it doesn't.
In the sense that here's the city council going, so you have state laws. We have taxpayer money. Go ahead. I mean, here we've got a politician who's wrapping his anti-gun bigotry in feel-good public relations that he knows are ineffective. And he's got taxpayer money to withstand the lawsuits. You and I don't.
You look at some of these, like brandishing a facsimile firearm in the presence of law enforcement. Was this in reaction to the 12-year-old who got shot and killed by a policeman in Cleveland because he had a toy gun? And they're trying to find a way to make sure that they can always blame the 12-year-old.
That if it happens again, their butt's covered.
Yeah, we're going to lock that 12-year-old up right after the funeral.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And you're right, John. Ohio does have preemption.
Yeah.
But it's not Florida preemption where politicians pay the bills when they pass unconstitutional laws.
Yeah, but they brought it down on the city of Columbus, as I remember.
Did they?
A number of years ago, and it's like they didn't have to pay the bill. But
right.
They found out, no, you can't do what you want to do.
Sometimes the anti-rights politicians lose. Part carry is now legal in Tennessee. Some city officials who had preempted discreet carry complained about the new law. Officials like Knoxville Mayor Madeline Ruggiero ignored the attacks that occurred in the disarmed victim zones known as her parks. Maybe that was because Mayor Ruggiero has an armed security detail of her own. They forget that most Tennessee cities let armed citizens travel without restriction in city parks. The anti-rights politicians were projecting their homophobia and ignoring real-world experience with gun owners. Here's a shout-out to Tennessee gun owners and legislators. You did the right thing.
I think we also ought to point out that the governor, who's now getting dumped on by Shannon Watts, had at one time been a member of Mayors Against Illegal Guns. And then he wanted to be governor and quit them, joined the NRA, and got elected governor.
Wow.
I would like to give a shout out to Liston Matthews, the gun rights examiner out of Knoxville, who wrote this up.
Absolutely.
Don't I also remember, didn't they get parking lot carry in Tennessee now, where even if your employer says no, you can't have a gun here, they cannot prevent you from keeping one in your car?
Yes.
More to the point, they can't fire you if they find out.
Yeah.
Okay. Very, very cool. Good on you, Tennessee.
Senator Ted Cruz is running for president. When he spoke in New Hampshire, Senator Cruz said, "I think it's very important to have a public discussion about why we're denying our soldiers the ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights on military bases. Currently, only law enforcement and security personnel are permitted to carry weapons, while soldiers are strictly prohibited from being armed on post. That prohibition was signed by President George Herbert Walker Bush."
Yeah, I wish, and honestly, folks, it was just a screw up with timing. I wish we could have had Daniel Shaw on. Daniel has spoken about this before, and we train these people in the use of firearms, the long guns at least, and many of them get trained in the use of sidearms as well. They are tasked with protecting our country. There is no reason in the world that I can think of. There's nobody in the world that I can think of that I would trust more than our soldiers to be able to handle a firearm responsibly. And so thank you, Senator Cruz. And last week I said I don't know that I could support Ron Paul because of his association with the National Association of Gun Rights. Boy, I don't know that anything. I haven't seen anything Ted Cruz has said that will make me not support him. I am really liking the way he's looking.
Speaking of candidates, another presidential candidate was at the NRA annual meeting. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush bragged about his record and said, quote, "Today there are well over 1.3 million law-abiding Floridians with a valid concealed weapons permit. 1.3 million. That's the most in the nation, nearly double that of the second state, which is Texas. Sorry, Governor Perry." Close quote. The number is closer to 1.4 million. A key factor is the ease and reciprocity granted through non-resident Florida permits.
I would love to know the number, and I don't know if there's a way to find it out, but I would love to know the number if there's a way to take out non-resident permits.
Oh, out of Florida?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I think I've seen it, but yeah, I don't know what it is either.
And
I think it's over 1 million.
Okay. Well, Jeb Bush, I'll tell you this right now. I'll put South Dakota up against Florida. Let's go per capita.
There you go.
Concealed carry permits.
There you go.
This good news will still make you cry. In 2010, 4 gang members charged into a Southern California jewelry store and rushed the staff. The thugs were armed with hammers and clubs. The store owner was armed with a pistol. He shot the robbers. One died, but the store owner was sued by the family of the dead robber. Even though the police said the store owner defended himself and the store staff from a deadly threat, California law allows anyone to file a lawsuit at any time for almost any reason. It took 6 years to obtain a full dismissal of the case against the store owner in California.
That article was written up by Chuck Michel, a prominent California firearms attorney, and in fact one of the attorneys now on the Peruta case. But it did bring it to mind. If you're going to carry concealed, you might want to buy insurance. And I just wanted to ask around this table, who has carry insurance?
I do. Well, I have the Armed Citizens Legal Defense League.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I also carry personal liability umbrella of $1 million.
There you go. That's smart. I should look into that myself.
Paul, how about you?
I let I let it lapse, the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network, but we need to. We are looking into going back into that. Honestly, I got so many God bless bills going out. But
We will be going back into that. I'll make it happen.
yeah, and we're going to be going in as a couple rather than as a family because it's cheaper that way.
Uh-huh. I'm thinking particularly with all the traveling you do as you carry, it would be invaluable.
Yes, very much so. And going back to this story, I want to, this poor guy. I don't know that we have any way to find out, but he was really victimized twice because he got victimized in the crime and then with the
civil suit.
Yeah, with the civil suit. I want to describe the people that filed it, but I can't. It's a family show. The civil suit, I imagine he had to have spent a ton of money to defend himself on that civil suit.
He did get some help near the end from gun rights groups, but and there is a fund to help pay his bills.
Good. It's got to be in the multiple thousands of dollars.
Oh,
high multiple thousands of dollars that he had to spend. Well, we burned up another segment, so we're going to.
Rob didn't even ask me.
Rob, okay.
Gary, cut. Well, now for our shy and quiet and retiring co-host, Gary Daugherty. Do you have insurance?
Of course.
Good for you. Tell me about it.
I have the maximum tier of second call, which covers I think $1 million on different things, plus paying me for time off work for court and paying for counseling sessions, and it's a very very good plan, and I also sell it.
Sounds comprehensive.
Yes, very much. And backed by the NRA.
Okay. Well, we are going to go ahead and step aside to break then, and when we come back, we've got still more news. So hang on for that news right after this. We got a comment on YouTube. I have to take my glasses off because I can't read this small print without. Mr. Fat said, "Did Rachel quit the show? I've not seen her." No, she hasn't. She had to take some time off. We expect her to be back around late May or June. She has not quit. She will be back. But when we left the Wednesday show, when we just point blank, we didn't have the time to get that Wednesday show done. We went to only Sunday shows, and her Sunday schedule just is outrageous. And she expects to be able to clear the time to get back with us to do the weekend shows, and she hopes to be back in late May or early June. So Mr. Fats, no, she's not quit. She's still with us, and she will be back fairly soon. So hope that answered your question. Thank you for and anybody who may be on the on watching on YouTube, or you can comment on the YouTube video itself, where you can hit the Q&A app. The Q&A app brings it right into the Hangout, and we can answer it live on the air. And you can also, again, comment on YouTube, and we will get that. It takes just a little bit longer, though. So, see, Rob, you want to bring us back in for our third news segment?
Will do.
Okay. Rolling.
Welcome to the news segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Susan, what's our next story?
Pennsylvania isn't like California. 3 Pennsylvania state representatives set up a seminar to inform gun owners of their legal rights and responsibilities. Representatives Seth Grove, Kate Klunk, and Kristen Phillips teamed up to hold the event May 2nd. An attorney will cover Pennsylvania's concealed carry laws, and a police officer will discuss how to safely interact with the law enforcement. The seminar is free, and there are no training requirements for a Pennsylvania CCW.
Boy, that's my kind of class cost right there, a free one. I like that. And it sounds like they're going to be giving you some, I mean, folks, don't consider this all of your training. You need a lot more, but they're going to be giving out some very relevant information in that one.
Well, how nice to have politicians who go, I'm looking out for the safety and security of my constituents. Let's teach them about the firearms laws in our state.
I I know. I was just laughing to myself that would never happen here in Illinois.
Hmm.
No, they have meetings though. They tell everybody that they have to get gun-free zone signs.
Yeah.
Well, how about if you, could that happen in Missouri?
Could that what happen?
Would something like this happen on the Illinois border, just across the border in Missouri?
Oh, I don't know.
And Indiana,
Wisconsin, Iowa.
Probably not Indiana or Wisconsin. I don't know about Iowa.
This story is from the Chicago area. 2 Arlington Heights police officers were found guilty of constitutional violations and ordered by a federal jury to pay a resident $80,000 in damages for illegally searching his home and seizing his guns. Art Lovey lost his wife to cancer. He was talking to his therapist for grief counseling. Lovey made a threat against the doctor who misdiagnosed his wife's cancer years ago. The therapist reported the threat to the Arlington Heights Police Department, although she added she did not believe Lovey was a threat to himself or others. A few hours later, Lovey got a call from the police, who asked if he had any weapons in his home. Lovey told them yes, he had a valid FOID card and 3 antique firearms, including a musket that was more than 100 years old, but that he had no ammunition. That night, officers showed up at his home, where he says they entered without a warrant and confiscated his weapons. The next day, the police told him he had to have a psychiatric examination. Lovey's lawsuit said police threatened him that if he didn't go into the ambulance willingly, they would handcuff him and physically put him in the ambulance. Lovey was released later that day after a medical evaluation determined he was not a danger to himself or others. Lovey was never arrested or charged with a crime. He says he tried to get his guns back several times, but it wasn't until 2 months later, when he hired an attorney to help him, that the guns were finally returned. He then filed a civil rights lawsuit, and 2 years later, jury found Arlington Heights police officers guilty. If the jury decision stands appeal, Illinois law said the individual officers would be responsible for paying those damages.
That would be one way for that thing to hold on appeal, and for those guys to actually have to pay out of their own pockets. That would be one way that civil rights are insured in Illinois.
But I think that's what it would take. You've again got a bunch of cops who are going, I'm not worried about the law. I've got lots of lawyers on my side. You have to pay yours by the hour.
Mm-hmm.
Gary?
Yeah.
Are you just clearing your throat?
Well, I'm saying that I hope you're both right. The whole attitude is so twisted up that I don't know if one case is enough to get everybody to realize what they're doing. I like I said, I hope you're right. I don't know if one case is enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With backing from the Brady Center, the parents of an Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting victim sued 4 online retailers for selling equipment and ammunition to the shooter, claiming that the firms should have known somehow the mental state of the purchaser. Sandy and Lonnie Phillips sued for unspecified damages and changes to business practices. At the time of the suit, many noted that a federal law, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act of 2005, protected firearms firms from lawsuits based on the acts of their customers. Colorado had a similar law, but added a provision that allows defendants to recover their fees and costs from unsuccessful plaintiffs. The lawsuit was always a long shot, and it failed in federal court. In dismissing the case, the judge ruled that the defendants may collect appropriate damages from the plaintiffs and their attorneys. In the resulting fee application, the Brady Center was specifically named for fostering the political lawsuit. Defendant Lucky Gunner requested that the judgment be recovered equally from the Phillips and their attorneys. As the Phillips were represented by both their attorneys and the Brady Centers, there is a possibility that the Bradys might have to pay something for their abuse of the legal system. One can only hope. While we deeply sympathize with the Phillips over the tragic loss of their daughter, we would remind them of the old proverb, if you lie down with dogs, you get up with fleas.
I have to preface my statements by saying that I am an affiliate of Lucky Gunner. Frankly, I think the Brady Center should be made to pay the whole bill, but they'll probably welsh on it. I think if they were made to pay, it'd be about 1/10 of their annual budget. And I don't think they get the deep pocket contributions from Bloomberg like some other organizations do, so that would hurt. I feel bad for the Phillips, but I agree. They let themselves be used as political pawns.
Yeah, they did, and it's horrible for them. I just the vision I have in my head is they got a pitch from an attorney, and the attorney way oversold the position, and it's like I want to say the old snake oil salesman, this will cure your cancer, whatever, and just we're gonna make them, we're gonna make them pay, we'll make them do this, and we'll make them change. And they had an extremely weak case to start with, and so the people, the Phillips went ahead and did it under bad legal advice. I certainly hope. I'm with you, John. I wish that the Brady campaign would have to pay the whole thing, but it looks like it says there in the story that the Phillips brought their own attorney in as well, so they should have some liability in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so tragic because these people were in a horrible, horrible situation. I hearken it to ambulance chasers, lawyers that just run up and try and grab every case they can. They said, "Oh, here's a situation with guns. Let's sue somebody." Brady did. I mean, I don't think these people. I could be 100% wrong. This could be the first thought in their mind was, "Hey, I have to sue somebody because my child died." I don't think that's what people think. Certainly not the way I was raised, but not the way most people were raised. And they just were led. I mean, I can see the conversation. Let's do something good from your tragic loss. And they said, okay, and it was a bill of goods. It was a load.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you were going to sue somebody, the first people that come to mind are Big Pharma, that the murderer was on all kinds of psychotropic drugs, and his therapist, who did inform campus security that the murderer was a danger to himself and others, but neither she nor campus security told the local cops.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of research into what I call an unholy alliance between the Brady Center's attorneys, plaintiffs' attorneys in various states, and then pro bono attorneys coming from what I call big law, the 250 to 1,000 to 2,000 lawyer firms. The Bradys, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, before the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act came through, they went with the negligence argument, and they worked closely with a lot of attorneys that used to be tobacco lawsuit attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not having they had some success, not a lot of success. But the lead Brady Center attorney, Jonathan Lowy, was there back then. He's been with them for 17, 18 years. He's still around. So
I've met some of those tobacco lawsuit lawyers. You don't want to have dinner with those guys. They'll turn your stomach.
And you want to wash your hands afterwards.
Well, but the intent. I mean, fortunately, there is a recovery law in effect, because I felt a lot of the lawsuits that I've heard, particularly from the Brady Center, are just designed to be extremely expensive to the respondent, and it costs them enough money to put them out of business, not actually do anything.
What? Mm-hmm. That is the anything they want to do, right?
Yeah, right.
We have several international terrorism stories that may have direct impact to this nation. In Italy, police are working to round up 18 Islamic terror cell suspects. 9 suspects have already been arrested. Another 9 are being sought. Some may have escaped the country. Prosecutors believe they were behind a failed 2010 plot to attack the Vatican, as well as a Pakistan market bombing that killed more than 100 a year earlier. It is not known what they were doing in Italy. Italian officials are responding to the threats of the Islamic State group to conquer Rome and destroy the Vatican. Security has been beefed up at the Vatican, but there is no information about any specific threat. In France, a jihadi accidentally shot himself in the leg, foiling plans for attacks on 2 churches. Police followed a trail of blood to a car where a stash of weapons, including a Kalashnikov, was found. More weapons and evidence of the terrorist plot were seized from the suspect's home. DNA evidence ties the suspect to this week's murder of a woman near the French capital. Police are searching for the others involved in this plot. French Prime Minister Manuel Valls warned that the country was facing an unprecedented terrorist threat. 8 miles south of the Texas border, a Mexican military personnel identified an ISIS terror training camp. The heavily defended camp sits in the Mexican state of Chihuahua, a haven for drug cartels. Another sits across from Columbus, New Mexico. The Examiner reports that Obama is aware of ISIS and other Islamists in Mexico, but is ignoring the threats to avoid compromising his amnesty program. Islamists have openly bragged about targeting Western civilization. The military, malls, and now religious congregations are on their list. Their plans have brought them to Europe and now North America. As Americans, Christians, and Jews have been targeted, it is up to us to be ready.
That goes back to our story earlier with the Catholic priest who wanted to have concealed carry class church. Folks, you need to the number one. We are our own first responders. You're going to be the first one there, no matter what happens. So yeah, if you live in the border area, pay attention to what's going on. Even if you don't, if you live near any major populated area, pay attention to what's going on around you. It was we just had the news here this past week. They just convicted Johar, what's his last name, the Boston bomber suspect, Tsarnaev. Yeah. The terror cells can be 2 people. You got to be aware. So that's about all I can say on it. Our next story, well, before we go to that, I want our listeners to know we send our staff to the far corners of the earth to cover the stories. Rob, you had to drive about an hour to hear Ed Peruta speak to the Tea Party group. You want to tell us about that, man?
It was tough duty, Paul. you used to live in El Cajon, South San Diego County.
Yep.
Peruta spoke in Ramona, California. He spoke at the Ramona Tea Party event held at the Ramona main stage. I ordered a hot dog and a beer while I got to listen to Ed. That's tough duty, dude.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
I might have to double your pay for doing that.
Oh, thanks. I'll submit the expense account for the hot dog and the beer.
Okay.
Ed now runs a news service that covers breaking news stories in the Northeast. He also does legal investigations for a firearms attorney, Rachel M. Baird. She works out of Torrington, Connecticut. Ed's also a director at Connecticut Carry. Clearly, one of our kind of guys. Let me give you some other background. Ed Peruta joined the Marines when he was 17 years old to fight in Vietnam. He's deeply patriotic and supports law enforcement. He was a policeman for 2 years, but was then dismissed because he did not shoot a fleeing black suspect when he was running away at night. Ed is not shy. He hates dishonest politicians and policemen. He is skeptical about every claim made by a government official. He has a firearms permit in Connecticut, Utah, and Florida. But as he said, getting a permit is not about guns for him. It's about the Constitution. You can get a hearing to have food stamps in Connecticut, and you must have that hearing within 60 days. On the other hand, Connecticut can stall you for up to 2 years to get a permit to carry. That made Ed Peruta angry. What brought him to San Diego, where he is involved in the lawsuit of Peruta versus Gore, now in front of the Ninth Circuit? Ed has several apartments across the country, including one in San Diego. He was living in his motorhome with his wife, and they were visiting San Diego as one winter. You know, I can see why you'd come to San Diego for the winter rather than stay in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke to the local gun shops and then asked about a concealed carry permit. Then he did what any good legal investigator does. He read up on the suspects and interviewed them. He read about what constitutes good cause in San Diego. And he tape recorded his 2 interviews with the San Diego deputies. He expected to be turned down when he went for the interview. At first, the National Rifle Association, the Second Amendment Foundation, and the California Rifle and Pistol Association did not help him when he appealed his case. He paid the first $15,000 of his own legal bills to get the case to trial. Now, the NRA is funding his case on appeal. He has, as I mentioned, a permit to carry in Connecticut, and he wanted to point out these similarities. Notice the population of Connecticut is 3.5 million. San Diego County is 3.3 million. Connecticut covers 4,500 square miles. San Diego County covers 4,500 square miles. The population and population density are very similar. Connecticut has 203,000 concealed carry permits, or about 4.5% of the population. San Diego has 1,200, or 0.04%. 100-to-1 difference. Ed's in his mid-60s. He said, "I may not live to see the case settled, but I hope you will." I read a similar article talking about the Peruta case that said it may have an impact on 60 million Americans. Here he is, just to give you a flavor for the man. This is what he said after the talk.
Ed Peruta, Peruta v. San Diego. Don't telegraph what you're going to do. Do it. Use the element of surprise and show up en masse at a county commission meeting and voice your displeasure from the podium.
That's when he was shaking hands after his meeting, telling the crowd of San Diego political activists to change their government. He was as comfortable with a Tea Party group as he would have been giving legal testimony.
Very, very cool. I knew he had, because he also was involved in cases in Connecticut. He's quite the fighter for our rights, and I certainly, the Peruta case right now, for those who are not maybe following it as closely as some others, it's currently going to be undergoing the en banc, the full 12 judge review there in California. Do we have a schedule for that yet?
I think they're going to hear arguments in June.
Okay. Yeah, it looked like it was just going to wind up that it was going to just be settled, but for some reason one of the justices, I believe the lead justice, decided, the one that was, now if let me correct me if I'm wrong, but the justice that brought this over for en banc, or the full 12 justice review, was the one justice, was one of the three that originally was on the case but got outvoted. Am I right on that?
He had the minority opinion, yes.
Yeah. And he also was the one who said that, well, despite the fact that Kamala Harris, the Attorney General of California, wasn't in on the original one, said she didn't want to be on the original case when she thought it was going to sail through, that now she has standing for appeal. This guy has got to be, let me guess, either a Clinton or a Carter appointee.
Ooh, I talked about that before.
I want to say Clinton. And the weird
I'm
thing
pretty
is,
sure it's Clinton.
The weird
he's out of Bozeman, Montana.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. He's not, no offense for you, Rob, a Californian.
You'd expect that out of somebody out of Southern California. No, we found another one.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get off to our gun quotes. I'll go ahead and take the gun quote this time. If ever a time should come when the vain and aspiring men shall possess the highest seats in government, our country will stand in need of its experienced patriots to prevent its ruin. That was Samuel Adams. Great patriot, sucky beer. Really bad beer. We're going to go ahead and step aside here. When we come back, we've got a short interview with Doris Wise Montrose, and then we've got our DGUs coming up after that. Hang on, everybody. We will be right back right after this. Okay, we could have technically done another segment. That was 24 minutes long, but... Okay, Gary, you want to bring us in for DGUs? Just 1 second here. We've got... Oh, okay, that's not us. So.
Did you notice that there's a thing in here for Rob about the interviews?
No. What?
You should really read the show notes.
Fortunately, he has you, Susan.
What? I still don't see it. Hang on, we'll be right back with our interview segment.
Then it says Daniel Shaw, Doris Wise Montrose, segment 4 DGUs. Rob, let me comment on Juice Can Shoot.
Oh, Rob, you want to bring us back?
There it is! Time to get your eyes checked again and get new glasses, honey?
Yes, it is, actually.
Okay. I'll get on that instead of that appointment.
Susan, do you have the Braille touchscreen set up for Paul soon?
No, but I'm thinking I ought to order one. We can start working on that.
All right. Okay, we are rolling.
Welcome back to the defensive gun use segment of the... Who the heck am I? Welcome back to the defensive gun use segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Let me comment on Jews Can Shoot. This is a project of one powerhouse of a woman, Doris Wise Montrose. Some of my friends feel that they need to be perfect instructors before they'll even take a friend shooting. I'm sure Doris would like to be perfect, but for her, progress is more important than perfection. That leaves her being both a student and a teacher. Now, I didn't include it in our short interview segment. Afterwards, she was talking to me. She has some lectures in mind where she would invite police officers, assistant district attorneys, and defense lawyers to talk to gun owners. She's having these meetings in Hollywood, California, in the belly of the beast, talking to gun owners. Good for her.
Amen. And that's, remember this, the news story we had about Pennsylvania having policemen come in and talk, and having attorneys come in and talk. That sounds like what she's doing right there in Hollywood, and that's great.
It is.
All right, Susan, what do we got for our first one?
First off, we'd like to thank all of our listeners who frequently email us to let us know about stories that they think we might be interested in. This story was emailed to us by listener and frequent email correspondent, Anthony L. You knew this next story was bound to happen in Chicago. A licensed concealed carry holder was also a driver for Uber. He was waiting in the Logan Square area while a group of people walked in front of his car. That's when Everardo Custodio began firing into the crowd. The Uber driver pulled out a handgun, fired 6 shots, and hit Custodio. No other injuries were reported. The Chicago police chief said concealed carry holders were a danger to the public, but this Uber driver is a better shot than Chicago and New York police officers.
When this story first came out, it was initially reported, and this story broke Sunday right about the time we were recording, so it wasn't able to, we weren't able to get it on the last show. But it was initially reported that he had a shotgun, and then no, it turned out to be a handgun. And I thought, well, could it be that maybe it was like a Taurus Judge or the Smith & Wesson? A Smith & Wesson, they have a version of that, but it turns out both those are 5-shot revolvers. So, but either way, good on the concealed carry holder in Chicago for stopping the mass shooting. And the other thing I wanted to bring up about this is good on Uber. Uber has several of the restaurants have had this, a policy of, we're just going to follow local laws. We're not going to say that you can or cannot carry. Just follow what's in whatever area you're at, follow the law, and we're good with that. I wish I could say that the other major independent company that does something like Uber does is Lyft, and they were interviewed here a while back, and Lyft has said not only can't the drivers cannot carry, there cannot be any weapons of any kind in the car, period, either with the driver or any passengers, or the driver can be dismissed from the Lyft service. Well, in this, how the heck are they supposed to know? If I drove taxi for a while, you don't know what the people getting back, if they're carrying or not. You don't know anything about them. And yet the company is holding the drivers responsible for what the passengers are doing. I think that's just bad business.
Paul, it's a policy put in place by a corporate security officer who said, if, a thug gets in the car, shoots at people, here, we get to hang the driver out in court.
Yeah, and it won't come back on us. Well,
right.
I'm just hoping one of these times somebody goes to a court case where they were injured in a gun-free zone of one kind or another, and that they can get it through one court or another that the gun-free zone was the reason they were injured, and make that business liable.
Right.
That will be a victory.
Yep.
A Conway, Arkansas homeowner effectively and somewhat exuberantly defended his life Monday night. 2 men interrupted James Allen's walk toward his car and demanded money. He drew a CCW, but the robbers shot first and missed. Mr. Allen then performed a fighting retreat behind a hail of 20 bullets. The altercation left holes in a neighborhood house and Mr. Allen's car. Fortunately, no one was injured. Unfortunately, there have been no arrests. The value of suppressive fire had long been known by the military, and while we will not argue with success, Mr. Allen's neighbors might have appreciated a little bit of restraint. We must reiterate that a shooter is morally and legally responsible for every round he or she fires.
Let's go back to Masada Ayub has been quoted everywhere as saying there's a lawyer attached to every bullet in your firearm. That's true. I'm glad the guy turned out okay, but oh my God, did he get lucky too?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, notice the huge difference between our two DGU stories. The Uber driver knew how to shoot.
Yeah.
A woman learned the harsh fact that a self-defense situation doesn't stop with the shot. A Huntsville, Alabama woman was forced to shoot when her armed, estranged husband invaded the house she shares with her mother. When the police arrived, she was standing in her garage holding a shotgun. When ordered to drop the gun, the woman, who could have been in shock or partially deafened, turned towards the cops with the gun. At least one officer fired. The woman is expected to survive. Her ex is in critical condition. Self-defense instructors point to the first contact with the police as an especially dangerous time. If possible, someone should meet the cops and explain the situation. Again, if possible, no gun should be near the victim's hands. It should be either holstered or put on the ground well away from the perpetrator. It goes without saying that the victim should be as non-threatening as possible and immediately follow the cops' instructions. If there is a doubt, slowly getting flat on the ground with hands spread would seem to be a good course.
Yeah, exactly. It's everything I've ever heard is when the police get there, the firearm should not be in your hands. Admittedly, this woman probably does not have any training. However, folks, for all those that listen to us, if you ever are in and I hope none of our listeners ever are in a position where you have to use your gun in self-defense, when the police get there, you probably still better be there. But when they get there, make sure your gun is either A, holstered, or B, on the ground with your hands off it. And certainly never, ever, ever, ever turn towards an officer with a firearm in your hands. Another case where she's going to live, but she got, just like the guy who fired 20 rounds, she got lucky as well that she's going to live through this.
Well, okay, if it's safe to do so. If you're holding a attacker at gunpoint, don't put the gun down or holster it until the police are there.
Well, yes, but once they're there, once the police are there, you follow their instructions. When they say put the gun down, put the gun down.
Well, absolutely. I'm just saying there are situations where you may have a gun in your hand. Just be aware.
Yeah, if you're looking at the threat and somebody to your side says, police, put the gun down, if you turn your head, don't turn your shoulders.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And I have some sympathy with this. I've never been in that situation. Here's a woman, probably untrained, scared to death. She thinks she's going to be killed. She uses a shotgun in self-defense. And the police come up and say, put it down. I bet that's really hard to do.
Yeah, and it's going to be, it's human nature. When somebody's talking at you, you look at them. If somebody is talking at you from behind you, you turn around. It's a really hard instinct to fight, but folks, I'm telling you, this could mean your life. Do not ever point or have a firearm where it could be pointed at a law enforcement officer, especially one who's responding to a reported shooting. They don't care. They are going to go home that night. That's they're there to protect and serve. Yes, they're there to help. Yes, their first goal is to go home at the end of the shift. And if somebody's turning around with a firearm starting to point at them, their thought is, I've got a family, I'm going home. So please pay attention to what you're doing.
A simple trip to the grocery store got a lot more complicated for a Little Rock, Arkansas man on Wednesday. Walking out with his groceries, the man identified as Gene saw an elderly man being attacked by 7 younger men. He could not ignore that situation, so he dropped his groceries and drew his concealed weapon. He stopped the attack and provided all CCW carriers with a learning opportunity. The altercation Gene had ejected himself into did stop. However, another shopper dialed 911 and reported him as a man waving a gun. Others hung around a potential gunfight, taking video and pictures. The men told him that this wasn't his fight and to put his gun down and walk away. When the police finally arrived, both the attackers and the victim had long since fled. Gene had involved himself in a situation that most cops dread, a family feud. The old man was being set upon by his nephew. What looked like a serious attack might have really been a loud, somewhat physical argument. Fortunately, Gene maintained his composure and kept his finger outside the trigger guard and alongside the pistol. Several bystanders indicated that they would also have acted as Gene did. So what would you have done?
That's a hard one to say.
Yeah, I can't answer the question without being in the situation, without having all the information, and we don't have that right now.
Self-defense philosopher Michael Bain strongly cautions against getting involved in someone else's problem. It's almost impossible to correctly grasp a situation at a glance. Is that man wrestling a woman a rapist? Or a husband trying to restrain his wife from hurting herself? Michael urges people to first ensure the safety of themselves and their loved ones, and only then act as a good observer for the cops. Although we certainly tip our hat to Gene and his decision to help an elderly gentleman, we must reiterate that as concealed carriers, we are not law enforcement. Rather, we are sheepdogs protecting a very small flock.
Amen. Yeah, again, we don't know what was happening. If it was 7-on-1, they were openly wailing on the guy, yeah, I'm probably going to get involved. If it was a very, very loud argument, a little bit of pushing, I'm probably, even at 7-1, not going to get involved. But I might hang out to find out if the old guy needs some help. But again, we don't know enough to really comment on whether the concealed carry holder was in the right or not. I'm just glad for the concealed carry holder that it did seem that he stopped. And I want to go one thing that wasn't mentioned in the story, and that's this. The police found the victim, the old man, and he refused to press charges against his nephew, which is one of the 7 guys ganging up on him. That brings up a terrible problem in our society, and that is if you're being assaulted, if you've got, people are not going to learn unless they have consequences. And that this nephew, believe me, he's gonna be in trouble again. He's gonna have altercations again because he just beat the tar out of his uncle, and guess what? Nothing came of it. And I don't know. Anybody else want to comment on that one?
No, I agree with you.
Yep, sorry, can't argue, you're right.
As part of our Don't Torque Off the Old Gal series, a kindly old Fort Worth grandmother proved she was made of much sterner stuff than her age would suggest. Jewel Turner, 74, rolled down her minivan window to help a stranger who was asking for directions. That stranger put a knife to her throat and demanded the contents of her purse. This old gal thought about what was in her purse, briefly considered her deceased husband's switchblade, but instead chose her handgun.
Yeah.
I just reached down, got the gun, and turned around and pointed it to his face, and I told him, "You back off or I'll blow your head off." Turner said she felt taken advantage of by the man, who preyed upon her sense of kindness. "Just let me know there's a dark side," Turner said. I noticed there was a dark side in me, too, because when I first pulled that gun on him, I actually wanted to shoot him. But I stopped and thought about it. I just hope they find him before he hurts somebody, or somebody hurts him. Somebody like a steely-haired grandmother. As for that very, very lucky stranger, the pistol-packing granny remembered that his eyes got big, and he just backed up and took off walking down the street like nothing happened. No doubt resolving to never again torque off an old gal.
Wow, good on her. Good on her. I like the fact that she carried both a knife and a gun.
Yeah.
So I do want to
Absolutely.
remind everyone, we do post each of our news and DGU articles at politesocietypodcast.com. Please take a moment to share them with a friend. Also, we do segment the show out now on our website, so if you only want to share the DGUs with somebody, you can certainly do that. We got one more break coming up, and then we're going to be doing our blog post segment where we talk about blog posts, and we'll wrap the show up. So hang on, everybody. We'll be right back with that right after this. Yeah, no email this week. Simon Says Train commented that he hopes Rachel isn't gone. No, he may have missed the first part of the show. No, everybody, Rachel is not gone. She's still here. She just is taking some time off. She's got wicked schedule problems getting on the weekend shows. She hopes to be able to join us again by the end of May or June. So, okay. And by the way, I told Charlie Foxtrot earlier, I think you all have access to it. I think I did it on the, I can't remember if I did it on the staff page or if it was in private message, but I said anytime he wanted to come on the air, he could. Oh, it wasn't
Yeah,
the
staff page, yeah.
Yeah. Poor guy's mic shy.
Hey, I used to be. I don't know what happened, but I used to be.
All right. I'll go ahead and bring us back, and I'll throw right to you, Rob.
Great.
Hey, and welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is normally our email segment. We don't have any emails this week. I do want to remind you, email us on air at politicsandguns.com. We'll get your email on the air. We had some great conversations the last few episodes. Please keep sending those emails in, and even if you want to do like Anthony and just email stories that you want to make sure we see so they get on the air, please do that, but keep that email coming. So without email, Rob, we get to the blog portion of the show. What have you got up on Slowfax that you want to talk about?
I wrote about a new gun ban at San Diego's Petco Park. That's where the Padres play. The local police and the team owners don't want concealed carriers in the park. Now, they won't let off-duty law enforcement officers carry in the park either. It's a political decision, not a security decision. I pointed out that not only are they making the fans at risk in the park, but the fans are at risk if they leave firearms in their cars, as they travel to their cars, and as they drive to the stadium.
Before, I know you got more you want to talk about, but I just want to make sure that one of the main things is only police and military should have firearms. Now they're saying not even the police. If you're off duty, despite the fact that you've had training, despite the fact that we pay you to carry a firearm, despite the fact that you're a proven good guy by the fact that you got a badge, even they cannot have firearms now.
And given all the military bases in San Diego, Paul, certainly not military. Oh, no, 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 no. Not amongst our civilians.
Wow.
Really crazy, right?
That's
Yeah.
why we don't do the T-Denny thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I also wrote about the new Pew Research poll that we covered earlier in the news. It really did make me laugh out loud at the news media. The media sensationalizes crime and violence. They sell them to us. And then they seem surprised when their viewers think we live in an unusually violent world. I swear they act like it comes as a shock for journalists to hear that an armed society is a polite society. Let's take an example from the NRA convention. Even the police could relax when 80,000 gun owners had their back in Nashville. John, what can you tell us about your No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money blog posts?
Well, among my blog posts in the past week, I've started my blog series, Bad Apple Lawyers. It will profile the attorneys who are behind the lawsuits intended to curtail gun rights, either by suing about laws, pro-gun laws, or more importantly, suing individual dealers trying to put them out of business, what I call lawfare. And many of these lawyers are with large law firms, and they are donating their legal expertise pro bono, or free to the Brady Center and other groups. Lawyers and others who practice lawfare on the Second Amendment need to be exposed for the anti-civil rights bigots that they are. The first to be profiled will be law professor David Carey's, and I hope I've got his name pronounced right, whose theories were used back in many of the municipal lawsuits in the 90s and early 2000s. And as I said in an opening, just like Stalin, Mao, and Lenin needed a theorist, and they found it in Marx, so too did the Brady Center and these anti-gun attorneys need a theorist, and they found that in Carey's. So,
do you remember how we talked about the ATF running the firearms owners in New Mexico into jail simply because they couldn't afford to defend themselves, and finally they had a written settlement recently?
Yeah.
Are they is Reed? Was that the name of the
Reese?
Reese. So this is a bunch of big firm lawyers figuring they can do the same thing to
Pretty much.
To a dealer or small manufacturer.
Pretty much. And I talked about, in the first posting, I talked about the lawsuit down in Florida against lock and load guns. It had been the subject of one of the presentations at the NRA's annual law seminar, firearms law seminar, and I went into more detail about it. It's one of these blogs series that I'm not going to run out of people to talk about, because there's lots of anti-gun lawyers out there, unfortunately.
Yes.
But you'll find this and other posts at onlygunsandmoney.blogspot.com.
Well, before we take off, I do want to thank Charlie Foxtrot for writing up some news stories and the DGUs for us. You don't hear him on the air because, quite frankly, he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't. He's not a big fan of talking publicly, but he is a big part of what you get to hear us say on the air. And he wanted me to mention that Rob and John have done a lot of work with that too, but they get the benefit of being on the air. So, but I do want to give him a shout out. Go ahead and check out his blog, Not One More Gun Law, and he's got a lot of good stuff up. He and Archer do a good job with that blog. That does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society podcast. Coming up next week, we've got Laura Carno is going to be coming back. She's got she's got a blog post that I want to talk with her about next week. You folks, you go ahead and look it up this week, though. She just posted today. And the title of the blog post is "No, I'm Not Going to Shut My Pie Hole."
I saw that one.
I can't wait to talk to her. It's been a while since she's been on the air. I can't wait to talk to her again. Everybody, that does it for this show. Rob, John, Gary, are you guys going to be here next week?
Plan to be.
I should be in town.
And Gary,
I will.
I know Gary's going to be here. I would have to fire him before he'd actually not show up for a
I
show.
really enjoy it. You're right. You would.
I am not sure if I will be here.
That's right. We've got a family. You got a family thing coming up.
Right. My aunt is coming into town from Washington State for a visit, and I'm supposed to go see her for a while. So I don't know if I will be done with that in time. I'm working 7 hours and then running up there for a couple hours, and then I will try to be back, but I won't guarantee anything.
Sure.
We'll just have to muddle through.
Drive safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that does do it for this time. Until the next show, everybody.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right. For our live viewers, I want to thank you for watching. And everybody, please, again, you don't get the commercials when you watch on YouTube. So please visit our advertisers, Concealment Solutions, Crusader Weaponry, New Jersey Second Amendment Society, the Firearm Safety Institute, sorry, Gary, and, of course, goodness, my brain just went dead, Firearms Policy Coalition. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and take us off there. Everybody, join us next Wednesday again, 3:30 p.m. Central Time. Laura Carno is going to be our guest.
Wednesday.
Thanks. Next Thursday, Sunday.
Sunday.
All right. Hopefully. All right, we're going to go ahead and take us off air.